Hello and welcome to another episode of Fly on the Wall with Josh Hill. I am Josh Hill. Today I'm joined by David G, one of the most well-known men, I'm going to say it, I know that you won't, but I'm going to, in the Australian cybersecurity ecosystem. Author of 2, soon to be 3 fantastic books, one of which we have here in front of us. And prior to that, a pretty impressive career. Some time spent in Japan, Hong Kong, Australia, consulting, biotech, insurance, banking and finance, and also something I'm really keen to talk to you about today, the non-exec director stuff. David, thank you very much for joining me. What have I missed in that intro?
Oh, thank you, Josh. I'm blushing. That's all good. That's plenty.
I'm sure there's more that we could go into. Look, appreciate you joining me. Really, really keen to talk a little bit about books, talk a bit about the process of being an author. I tried it once. I was not very good at it. It lasted about a month. So I'm impressed that you've now got 2, soon to be 3. Let's go back to the start, though. Tell me more about young David and why technology, why cyber, why the path that you chose.
Yeah, look, I think like most things, Josh sort of stumbled into the world, right? But and I always felt that I grew up in Darwin, so it makes me kind of unique. I'm a country boy, living in Darwin, coming to Sydney for school, and then being sort of a fat kid, literally just a fat chubby kid and spoiled and. Went to school and they kind of force you to play sport, force you to study, and then okay, I just study, I play sport, and then I got good at it, right, and became captain of the team. But I think I learned a lot about myself, about in a way is that being the fat kid is always in my back of my mind. Is how do I stop myself and put myself in position and keep learning. And so I always felt that my brothers who got the book prizes and at school, they were the smart ones. I was the dumb one, right? So I kept motivating myself to improve myself. And that's probably a lot of my journey. And you see through the different countries and companies and sectors I've worked in is to put it like I want to keep learning, and I'm still learning today. Writing books makes me learn. Speaking at conferences makes me learn. So that motivates me, and I've kind of got that after so many years of knowing the fat kid's just around the corner somewhere.
He's still back there in there.
He is. Yeah.
Good experience for life. Was it boarding school that you were here for?
Yeah, I was at Newington College and
Nice.
I played rugby and basketball, and I was captained the basketball team. I've told that story a few times, but it was quite interesting because I'd be in the first basketball team. I'd be in the second basketball team, at 15, and then the first, and then made captain for the last year. And the coach, I've spoken about this guy previously in my book, actually. Herb Barker had played for the Wallabies. He'd been in the Empire British Games as I think it's like a silver medal or bronze medal in the javelin or something, and he'd been this coach and play in the Australian basketball team. And he was just an incredible guy. And so he asked me to be captain. Then he said, David, can you don't shoot, pass the ball. And this was probably my first leadership lesson, because I was the best shooter, and I was like, "What do you mean, don't shoot? Pass the ball." And back in those days, this is 1977. Point guards didn't exist as a title, and you were the shooter. And then so I was like, "Say, you want me to make others better?" So I took that, and I struggled with that. I'm not sure I succeeded, but I struggled with that idea and how to make others better. And so all through my career, I've tried to do that. Knowing that the fat boys here, that there are others like me who need to be prompted, need to be coached a little differently. How do I make everybody to be the best versions of themselves? That's kind of motivated me.
Did you think it was having to work extra hard meant that you appreciated other people's journeys a little bit in that sense?
I did, and I was a young dad too. I mentioned before I was being a young dad. I was a dad at 20, right? And I was at Sydney University, and I was doing jobs, making pizzas, selling jeans in shops, a waitering, cocktail bar, I did all kinds of stuff to make a living, and then trying to get to university at the same time. So it kind of pushed me. The fat kid was being pushed to do stuff he wasn't comfortable with. And so the whole idea about being comfortable, being uncomfortable, I started to embrace that, to say I need to stretch out and do things. And so being a dad made you stretch in many ways. You're a new dad, right, too, but you kind of like, how do I nurture this thing? So it doesn't matter to me if it's your family or people you work with. They're your family, and how do you make them grow faster? And so I learned things from being a dad, and I mentioned before, I'm having my son learn to read and at the age of 12 months, and he can swim and play the Suzuki violin and all sort of stuff. But I took all those learnings from home into the workforce and said, okay, I can actually do the same thing to coach people to be better.
It sounds like you're giving credit there to the catalysts that have pushed you along the way, but I think that there's some mindset stuff that you've also developed yourself to make that kind of leap.
I think so, but it's also then the realization, you know, I mean, meeting my wife when I was 16, and then she's telling me that she studies 40 hours a week, and I was like, 40 hours a week? I didn't study 40 hours a month. Okay, right? So how do I do that? So I realized, okay, I could maybe do an hour before school, hour lunchtime, 2 hours after school, evening. I could probably do 40 hours too, but I just stopped playing rugby, and I love rugby, and I'm a crazy rugby fan, right? But I made those choices when I was 17 to say, actually, I want to stop doing what I love, not because my girlfriend's telling me to, but I think I can be something different if I choose to be. And my friends didn't understand that.
No, they wouldn't.
They wouldn't. That's why are you playing rugby? You got a big chance to be in the big team. You know, I know I'm going to do this. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to study and try to get to university and try to make myself a better person. And so I think those sort of choices I made myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of had that sort of impression upon myself to keep doing making those decisions, I think.
So very self-aware for a 17-year-old.
Maybe. No, we all look back and go, that was a bit awkward. You know, that wasn't great. But you know, I think like most of us, you get good grounding from your parents, and the things that they teach you make you very centered. And you know that things like integrity. My dad would teach me that. Okay, so it's more important to do the right thing than trying to be seen to be doing right things. And so you carry that through your whole career and your life because you kind of taught that. It's built into you, and you can't fight that.
Yeah, it's good stuff to both get for yourself and then to pass on and continue kind of processing that down generations. I think it's a really good thing. I'm curious here around books. As I said in the intro, I tried to write one for about a month, and it was very, very hard. I didn't give it enough credit at the time. Yeah. What made you decide that you wanted to do this one? You know, the hopefully the next one coming up really soon as well. What was the process for you going, that's what I'm going to do next? Look,
if I go way, way back, you know, Computer World, CISO, magazine, IT News, in stages of my career, if I go back like 12, 15 years, I was writing articles for these guys, and I was always interested in using part of my brain, which is the creative side, to think about things. And so in workplace, you do these really boring reports, and they're not fun to do. You just do them because you've got to do them. You got to write the right language and present them and so forth. But when you're writing an article for a magazine, it's kind of like you can talk about anything. And you can just make up stuff, right? And say, here's what I think about this strategy or technology or you know, data or AI, whatever it is. And so that's how I started in that space. I kind of just asked, and they said, okay, I get paid a few $100s for an article, and it gets syndicated around the world. That's kind of cool. And, and it wasn't an ego thing. It was just more of like, I just enjoy having a glass of wine in the evening and spending half an hour to write an article about something and make up shit, right, in a way. So, and so that's something I did, and wrote a couple hundred articles. And then I always said to myself, at some stage, I want to write some books. And so I think these two plus the third book were in my head 5 years ago. I said I want to write my first book around life lessons and how do I became a CIO and CISO, and how could I share some of those stories and things that worked for me. And I remember asking some colleagues to help me write, as an editor, just to read my stuff. And for God's sake, if you think I'm not being humble, slap me around, because I don't want to think I know the answers, right? And that's never the case. I did this worked. I did this, it didn't work. Let me tell those stories. But then as I was writing the first book, The Aspiring CIO and CISO, I had this idea around, and I'm still at Macquarie, right? So I'm still at Macquarie. I told them I'm going to retire in 15 months' time. Yeah. I've got this plan, I'm turning 65. I had said, I'm not a major planner, okay? But I'd planned big milestones like that. And I said, well, when I turn 65, I'm going to retire. And I had iPhone 6 that was called 8 years, sorry. And it was actually the date, go fast forward, which I'm going to retire on. Yeah. My wife said, we got 8 years because that's going to retire here. And so when I told her I'm going to retire next year after my bonus, and she said, you're crazy. You're not going to, I said, no, I'm not going to do nothing. I'm going to be busy doing other stuff, but I don't want to do this anymore. I'm interested in reinventing myself again. So, the book things came to me quite easily because I, spent the first book 6-7 months of Sundays for an hour and a half, 2 hours writing that, because I was only tired free when I was working. But then I started to cast around because, I had this idea, maybe I can get others who are like me, but actually can't write or don't know how to write or how to start, and encourage them to tell their life stories. And so maybe I can get 5, 10, 15, I got 25, 28 people.
Yeah.
And some were authors and some had never written their life. So I had to, press record and work with them to interview them and, write a draft. And you get, sometimes 3, 4, 5 drafts, and then you get the editors changing it. That process, that part's really tedious.
Yeah.
But the other part actually of having people tell their stories is kind of liberating, for them too, because they're talking about their life and what I did. I made these interesting stories and mistakes and moved from Poland to Hong Kong to London and all this sort of stuff. And so that was fun. Yeah. That was really fun. That was really fun to do that. And you don't do this for money. Okay, you do it because you feel like you're giving back and giving. I tell people like, okay, what's the advice that you want to share that to the next generation that no one told you, that you wish someone had told you. So again, please be humble. Don't write how wonderful you've done things. Just talk about how you've done them, or how you do a strategy, or how do you do a transformation, or whatever that is. Yeah.
And I think, that's another catalyst you mentioned there, by the way. I'm seeing throughout life, there's catalysts that you've taken the opportunity of. I think what I really liked about the concept, and, not to give everyone the shock of actually reading it, is that you're right. The human being behind it is actually really important. Their stories are really important. We in technology can sometimes get a little bit bogged down in minutia. We love talking about tech. This whole thing is about people at the end of the day. All of it. It is. All of it is.
Well, there's tech involved there, for
course.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's tech and the strategy, and there's changes, but there's all about people and growth, and people who've telling their stories about where they started, and look at Catherine Rowe, the Reserve Bank of Australia, CISO. When she wrote this book with me, she was the QBE, and she says, David, I used to be at Commonwealth Bank, and I used to be a lawyer, and I was in regulatory, and I said, okay, just talk about that. Talk about what skills you had around, sort of executive poise, be able to think logically and problem solve and stakeholder management. That's what you brought into your CISO role. Then what you realize, okay, I don't have this deep technical expertise. How do I have people around me to help me do that? And that's okay, because we need that. And given we talked before about all the vacancies, how do you bring in leadership to help drive that with the board particularly? Yeah. You need to have a bit of both. That sort of soft skills side as well as some harder skills, and call it harder skills.
I know what you mean. Being different thoughts and perspectives.
I think so.
And it's funny. I think funny maybe the wrong operative word there, but we tend to demonize people that don't come from and this is not just in security. This is across technology wholesale. If you haven't been, I don't know, systems administrator, you can't be a CIO, whatever that might be, right? I think that's actually a real detriment to this kind of opportunity. And I think a book like this would be good because you'd look at it and realize, and I'm going to ask you this actually afterwards, there must be some trends you would have seen in that. These people that have gone to the very top of their careers, right. What did you pick up out of it? Yeah,
no, it's interesting because you see that through this process, but also in real life when you're mentoring, coaching people. Because one of my cathartic moments is becoming a CIO for the first time, and I did a transformation at the age of 33, and at the age of 35 I was offered partnership with EY, and I thought, do I want to do that? Do I want to be a used car salesman? Sorry, no offense. Maybe not. Maybe I want to be a CIO. And so they promised me this career path was of being a CIO in Australia, put you through an MBA, start giving you shares, little cufflinks, they call them the handcuffs, and then we'll send you to China or Hong Kong or Japan or US, which is what I did. 15 years in 5 countries. And having to change, every 3 years or so, and not take people with me. I did then take that team and build it, and then find a successor, build a successor, and then move on. So in a way, the pattern I've learnt from that, being spoiled and doing that, I've kept that my whole career, I think, because I've sort of, okay, I can come in, put a strategy in place, transform the team, transform how we operate with the stakeholders, and then I'm bored. I've done it. I find a successor.
Yeah.
And so to answer your question is that, you then said, okay, how do I find people who have got the ingredients to be the leader? it doesn't mean they look like me or sound like me, but they've got to have certain ingredients, and then they may also be missing things, right? So I got a great story of a guy who I worked with. He was in Japan at the time. I was the CEO for Asia Pacific, and he was the head of digital development. He was a Java programmer and a lawyer. Okay, very strange combination.
Yeah.
South African, spoke many languages, French, Japanese, very well. And I said, okay, this guy's got strong leadership, strong delivery, stakeholder management skills, never been in infrastructure, never understood technology, but he can code. But he got the whole idea about digital change. So I can make him my successor. So I took him aside and said, mate, in 2 years' time, I want you to be me. Okay, we're going to put you through some exercise where you follow me around. We have to learn, and you have to dress a bit better because he's dressing in awful jeans. And
he's a developer, yeah. Well, mindset, yeah.
And you need to be thinking about other things, but also you need your team to love you, not fear you, because the moment they fear you, and that only gets you so far. So if they love you, they'll follow you because of that admiration, and they think what you're doing is inspiring them. At the moment, they're just scared of you. And so I understand that's a good thing to get things done in the short term, but actually it doesn't work long term. So can we try work on that and, invite your team to your house, have drinks with them, show me your personal side. And that's, for some people, a little confronting, but just trying to understand that's what he needed to do. And so everybody needs to do slightly different things.
Did you find with all the different locations that you spent time in that there was one size fits all type strategy? Obviously your approach was relatively similar. What was the difference, or how much of a difference was the cultural impact of, all right, I did this and it worked really well in the States and then it just doesn't work in wherever else?
I mean, even though it's the same company, your peers and bosses and stakeholders are all different. Okay. The only thing that's similar was there was technology that was somewhat similar, but we're trying to drive that very differently, because I think right now the standardization is kind of natural, but back then in these companies, we'd have 45 different Salesforce systems, right? 30 different ERP systems. And we're trying to standardize that into one globally. And we'd say, okay, how do we lead that transformation from 40 into one? And how can I be volunteering to do that? So that was part of it. But I think you had to, if you're living in China and Shanghai or Hong Kong or Japan or US, you had to understand that there's cultural aspects about there that you can never change. It might annoy you, but you have to embrace that, because every culture's got strengths that you can use to get things done. So if you say in Japan, for example, right, incredibly long hours they work, sometimes very inefficient, and you just need to cut through that and say, look, what I want is results. I don't need you to be here till 10 o'clock every night. And you got to role model that yourself. And then you'd shockingly, I would have a Friday night meeting that started at 5:30. But that was early in Japan. Yeah. And at the end of a staff meeting for an hour, I would apologize in Japanese, my bad Japanese. I say, "Kokoro sama desu." I apologize for leaving early. You guys should go home as well, right? And they looked at me and they smiled, and they'd go instead to the pub or the bar with their friends, have a drink and talk about what is David talking about? What do you mean by that? And try to have this in Japanese nemawashi, try to get some discussion around consensus around what did Josh really mean by that, and then go for dinner, and then maybe midnight go home. And that was the cycle for a Japanese salaryman. So you can't change that, but you just encourage it to. I'm looking for this. I'm looking for that great example, talent, right? So I come into Japan, second largest market for Lilly globally, and I was coached by the HR. You need to be there tomorrow. You need to take over. Okay, and it was kind of a tricky situation because the CIO, I'd been asked for the last 12 months to coach him to be better, and I'd said, "Oh, sorry, it's just not working out." And they said, "Yeah, we recognize that. You've tried. We're going to actually have him work for you directly." And I was like, "Okay, this is going to be very awkward because, he's going to feel funny about this." Anyway, but I was told by HR at the time, "David, your biggest job is people." And I was like, "Really? The technology doesn't work. The infrastructure network doesn't work. All these applications. Oh my God, it's just a mess. Really, people?" Then I got there and I realized, you're right, because you can't make those changes without the people first. And what I learned, Josh, in that time was that in Japan, there was no exit policy for staff. You couldn't fire people. Yeah. So I had to sit down every morning at 6:30 with the head of HR, his office next to mine, and say, look, I've just had a meeting with Josh. I've given him some guidance around what he's not doing, and we documented it all. And I said, I really hate this, but we had to get Josh to resign.
Yeah.
So the first person who was a troublemaker, he took 9 months to resign.
Oof.
And then his friends, month 9, month 10, month 11, the 3 people that were the most troublemakers that were doing really dodgy things, subverting, authority and strategy, all resigned on their own terms. So then I could actually refresh it because I was allowed to boss. Okay, we can go and find some talent now. And so, how do I find talent? And what I was getting these 100 CVs of, not being sexist here, Japanese men that are 35 years old that work in pharmaceutical companies, all in the same black suit, white shirt. And I said, look, at HR, I'm really concerned because what I want problem solving, multilingual, get stuff done. And I don't care, young, old, male, female, Pakistani, Indian, I don't care.
Just get the job done.
I want those 3 things.
Yeah.
Can we do that? Can we think about talent differently? And so, and I was actually living in Kobe, near Osaka. The best talent was in Tokyo. So I went and visited a few agencies in Tokyo, and I said, look, I'm trying to find these 3 things. If you find a person that wants to be even the Kansai area, not the Kanto area, and wants to come back, call me and I will talk to them, interview them today, because I know that the best fish go fast.
Yeah.
And I did that. I had people come talk to me that day and said, okay, can you come down tomorrow? We'll get you on a bullet train, meet you at the station, interview you there. Just made it easy, right? So it didn't go through the normal processes and spend weeks and months to get CVs and filtered. We just went bang. And guess what happened was we ended up with a really talented team. And so I think we had, in year 3 and 4, we were having the business asking to take the talent off me. So we were exporting 20% of my team in year 3 and 4 to business roles.
Different teams and
marketing, product management, because they were saying, hey, this person gets stuff done and he's multilingual and he's global. And I said, exactly. You take them, I'll get more. And I just loved that. That was just fun. And I learned so much from that exercise of, embracing that. Then by embracing that, I can able to achieve my own objectives selfishly as the CIO, right?
Well, they are your objectives, but they're the company's objectives as well. They're aligned. And I think it's a really good point. And I might get you to repeat it at some point just for our customer base so that they all know that's how you should do recruitment. But you're 100% right. I think that the biggest thing that I see certainly is when someone goes into a new role, it's actually not necessarily all on them to succeed. It's about how much they can take people on that journey and make the changes they need to make. Right. That's the big challenge for a lot of people. Yeah. And the Japanese market, talent-wise, is such a strange market too, from all my understanding.
Taking people with you is a common thing. Right?
Yeah.
And I think in my first book, Josh, I talked about, my warts and all. Here's what David does, and what people see David as being good at. And similar, actually in writing there, right? Say, and then by the way, here's things he doesn't do very well. Yeah. And when I do a presentation on this, I say, by the way, there are things here that I've worked on for 25 years to make them not so bad. So people think you're good at that. And then so taking people with me is one of the things I've worked on, because I want to go fast. I want to get stuff done, transform, and realize no, I need to slow down, explain it, and re-explain it. And make sure I'm transparent as hell. You know what I mean? And it's interesting. People remember that because I met a guy I worked with years ago when I was in RSA a few weeks ago, and he said, David, I remember you coming to CUI up in Brisbane, and on the very first town hall, you kind of said, there's 100 people in the room and talking about transformation, and we just started transformation. You said, if you don't want to be here to make transform be uncomfortable, then there's a door over here. And I said, yeah, I think I did say that. Yeah. And I kept thinking as a HR here, because that's probably not appropriate to say, but however, all right, it's very true, because we're going to be working very hard. We're going to be uncomfortable, have to learn new skills. And at the end of it, you may not have a job because you might want to do something different. And so, that may not sound like you. And so honestly, that's probably a better option than sticking it out. But people remember that. But that was just kind of speaking from the heart, which is, I want you to come on the journey with me, but I'm not going to drag you. If you come on the journey, I will retrain you and make you a better person, but you got to become with me.
It's going to be hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. I think that's always a kind of, particularly those environments, customer-owned banks. I started my career in one. It's very entrenched beliefs.
Oh yeah,
And that kind of thing might not have gone down too well with some.
no.
But it needs to be done, right?
But it worked in the end for me because I got a group of people, cadre people who wanted to make change happen and wanted to be that transformation, knowing that in the end they all got better jobs somewhere else.
Who'd have thought? Yeah. Let's talk a bit about the role of the CISO. It's an area that I talk about a lot. It's evolved a lot over the last, 20, 30 years. What do you think has been the biggest change you've noticed? And crystal ball, where's it going to go moving forward in your opinion?
Oh gosh, it'll continue to evolve. And there's many kinds of CISOs, many kind of personas. So there's not one kind of way of doing that. And I talk about the personas in my books. So it has been a techie sort of job that's now pivoted, and you need to be really good at board. If you're not good at board and can't convince them that you're buying down the risk, as much as you're not doing the other side, they will not have confidence in you. So it's a really tough job to be good at, and it's I don't miss that because of it's you're on 24/7. No one ever says thank you, Josh, you did a good job. Never, right?
Only when it breaks, you're in trouble.
No, exactly. And so it's a tough job for that reason. And then you need to have, therefore, how do you put your arms around the team so they don't feel exposed? Because you do feel very exposed when bad things happen and you don't know the answers, and you're getting the CEO, CO calling you and saying, what's happening? We need to know, and have an update every hour. And we're like, well, I can't give you an update every hour because I don't know anymore. We need to investigate. But that's what people ask for because they're under so much pressure themselves. So, we look at the numbers, and I did this in a webinar the other day. The numbers are that 25% of CISOs lose their job post a major breach.
I'm surprised it's not more.
But then CIOs also, there's about 15% of CIOs lose their job. And then CEOs, about 10% lose their job. And I think in Australia, it's actually probably the numbers are worse, I think.
Yeah.
So there's pressure on.
Yeah. Right.
So, and that's not going to go away. I think to your question around where's it going to, and I think I got a lot of injection from my RSA event recently, where, with this 43,000 people, and I was there on a press pass and writing articles for CISO magazine, and because I was writing articles, I was meeting up with all the latest companies that are, one company I met with, have been around 15, 16 months, just got $61 million in funding.
Wow.
Staggering amount of money, 10 customers only. So but they're AI and cyber, right? And so I guess the thing is that at this conference, and I wrote about this in the articles, I predicted that there'd be 40, 50% of the content being AI. And I said I was wrong. It was actually nearly 100%.
Yeah.
And every VC spoke about AI in a CISO cyber context. And this is a cyber conference.
Yeah.
so to me, the CISO's down that path of you must embrace it. There's massive FOMO from boards about missing out on the opportunity to actually exploit this for profitability and cost cutting. At the same time, having seen and interviewed 4 or 5 different startup companies, startups, but well-funded companies that do AI, and they're basically AI era companies for cyber defenses. I know that many of my peers here actually don't use them yet. They're still using the old stuff, the old platforms, and who actually got an AI module, and and so I think that this is the interesting part, is that we have this concern that when we saw the news from Anthropic, right, and that's with Mythos, and that's amazing. That's great news, right? But it's scary because there's so much threat surface here that's now new, and we're still working on this other your existing team. And you think about this, right? Your existing team are working on cyber controls here for law management, for access management, all that's fun stuff, right? Yeah. Nothing's changed. That's still there. You're still working through that to the board. At the same time, you got this new threat landscape over here. Arguably, it's double the size of that. And there's no new controls, and you can't block them all.
No,
people have said that to me. I'm going to put a whitelist. I said blacklist that. Really?
Yeah.
The Hugging Face has got a couple of million models. They're really going to keep up to date with that? You can't. So the CISO of the future has got to actually then say, how do I embrace this? How do I architect a way to safeguard some foundational things because I can't do it all. I can't rebuild it all because I'm doing this as well. I need to build this here, but piece by piece by piece. Where do I start? And that roadmap is being built as we speak. I don't think anybody's solved the problem yet.
No.
Okay. And then you might be having, a new AI DLP tool with a traditional DLP tool, both working hand in hand. And at some stage it'll take over. But it is interesting. I think the last thing I'll say, Josh, is that I've encouraged, in conferences I've spoken last year, I've encouraged the CIOs and CISOs to be on the front foot for the side, because we know that data and AI has never been front and center for any of these guys.
Yep.
Even the CIO has been a bit skittish about data. I'm too busy doing this sexy digital stuff because people care about that. And data has never been, for most CIOs I know, including myself, right? I've done a lot of data projects, but it's not normal. Most people don't want to touch data because it's a business thing, and it's noisy and messy, and we just have duplication of data, right? As you know, that's a privacy issue, a retention issue, all that sort of stuff. So how do we have the CIOs and CISOs embrace this? So I've talked about this a few times, which is, in the organization of the future, you'll be managing people and robots, agents, and there'll be some crazy ratio, right? 1 to 1,000, 1 to 2,000. There's a man in the middle somewhere at the moment. There's talk about that being different as well.
Yeah.
And I did this with my first book. I said, look, when we think about as a leader, you've got a very simple equation. I've got Sam over here. Sam's working with Josh and working with David. 3 of us work okay together, but actually Josh and I don't work great. So we actually, in terms of a synergy, we don't have a multiplication, we have a minus. You're a great player, you get stuff done, 9 out of 10. David's not great, he's 5 out of 10. Sam over here is 6 out of 10. So as a leader, your job is to make that algorithm output, right? How do I coach Sam to be a 7, Josh to be 9.5, and David to be not a 5 but a 7? Yeah. I coach him by giving him good feedback, and then by doing that coaching and then also insisting on teamwork, guess what? I get a great algorithm. Now then inject the AI component. I've got this robot over here.
Force multiplier. Yeah.
That robot's knowledge-wise, 9 out of 10. Ethics-wise, who knows, right? So you got the same thing, which is you got these humans and bots working together. Now start off with might be only one bot, and then humans will be like, I don't really like that bot because it's annoying. It doesn't have holidays. It's always right. It just doesn't have a break, and sabotage could happen, right? So you have this not necessarily a multiplication with bots to start off with. So that's going to happen. You're going to get more and more of these bots with less and less people, and so that equation is what all of us face. So then the question is around what's the job of the CEO and CISO? How do you then make sure you embrace this? And so what I've encouraged people to say is that, well, remember the shadow IT, and then we get shadow AI now, right? So which means you need to be the HR department for bots, which means you hire them, help them hire them with the business. You make sure you train them, you promote them, fire them, dismiss them if they're bad, all that sort of whole processes. If you say, no, that's the business responsibility, then actually when it screws up, they still get you anyway.
Of course.
So get on the front foot and say, look, I want to help you. Yes, it's your bot, but I want to help you make sure it's trained properly, that it does the right things ethically and everything else. And then if you do that, then actually you're lessening your risks for you as a leader. I've been saying this for about a year now. Yeah, I'll have to wait and see what happens. But the people actually say, look, Dave, I hear what you're saying, but actually I'm too busy. I'm too busy doing my job here. You want me to go and train bots and onboard the bots and promote the bots? But I keep saying it because I think that's the right thing to do.
And I think it speaks to the evolution of the technology executive wholesale, right? They need to be closer to the business as they continue to grow and evolve. And that role will just become a business role, right? With a tech lens.
Right.
I also think that, technology teams and functions are going to mature to the point where that's just normality too. For so long, we're always kind of in the corner. Oh, that's a tech problem. That's got to go, I think.
Yeah. Look, I think I've in my first book, I talk about, when I'm coaching somebody, I'll say, you got a skills, knowledge, experience, and behavior, right? SKEB. And this model I've used in my Lily days in Japan, I learned. And you say, for every person, every leader or junior person, identify one skill one skill around prompt engineering or one knowledge piece around database, whatever it is, and then experience behavior is harder. And actually, yourself is that when you're actually promoting people and getting people that are high flyers, they're the ones with the good experiences that have experienced, doing an architecture global strategy, right? And then behavior, which is actually how do you say no to executives and other board members when actually they're asking for stuff that's impossible. So what I'm saying is that SKEB is important for all of us, but in the future, AI will always beat us from a knowledge standpoint. Yeah. We can't beat that. Skills, soft skills, we have an advantage over them.
Massive.
At the moment,
yeah.
Robots will change over time, but that's where we can actually say, actually, my soft skills to negotiate stuff, and then that comes from my experience and behaviors. They'll have experiences, but not really the same at this stage.
Yeah, influencing very different when it's not physical.
I think so. So that's so when you think about it, it's not all lost. We just need to figure out where do we hang on to that we've got a natural Darwinian advantage, and try to develop those areas. Rather than saying it's all is lost, we can't beat the bots.
No,
and probably the chances are you're not going to beat the bots, but you're going to be able to survive by honing your skills and honing your experiences and behaviors.
Yeah, I think, as I say, I think it's the evolution of that. Any tech role, you remember many years ago, you would have people that would sit in the corner and just write code. I mean, that doesn't happen anymore. It's not possible.
No.
You need to be out there speaking to people, and those soft skills. Just skills these days. They're not soft and hard. They're just skills, I think. So it's very interesting to see that. And I think that's going to be a really big change that the bots are going to actually help us with a little bit.
Yeah.
Ironically, less human interaction will make the skill sets more pertinent. I'm keen to dive into the director discussion, right? So was being a director always something that was very intentional for you? Was it something you wanted to do? Another kind of, you said you weren't a planner before, but I've seen the theme going through this.
Yeah, okay. Well, firstly, I think going from a 20-year CEO career to CISO because I wanted to try something different, right? And then jumping into HSBC and jumping in the deep end, literally. Big organization, attacked a lot. And then I thought to myself, actually, do I want to do that again? The CIO job? Yeah, not really. And I've done enough of that. CISO job? Oh my gosh, maybe not. But running risk and using my scar tissue for being a CIO and CISO to then go and say, well, actually, I want you to look over there. I think I'm really concerned about that.
Yeah.
And which is the top-down thing, because I've, most risk people don't have the hands-on experiences, so they can't do that. They'll just skirt around the policies and procedures and the like. And so I really enjoyed that. And that to me, to answer your question, that was a deliberate choice to stop doing things and be better at asking harder questions, which is what boards do.
Yeah.
Now, I'm in this phase where I'm 90% advisory and a little bit of boards. And what's interesting, of course, is that sounds very similar, but when you talk to people in boards, they go, no, you can't do the advisory, but you got to make a choice. You'll be doing this or this. And so, I've really told them, well, at some stage I'll switch the advisory off, and I'm doing, lots of stealth advisory with companies and Israeli startups and Bain and a whole bunch of companies, but I can switch that off. But I've already said all along, which is at some stage I'll do more board, but I'll always do advisory because it keeps your hands dirty and your brain sharp. If you're just doing, board roles and you're the tech guy, tech girl, and you haven't been thinking about AI, whatever it is, right? You're not going to be very useful.
Yeah. If you're not actually in it in some capacity, your value diminishes, I believe, on that.
Correct.
There's plenty of people that would probably be bad examples or good examples of that being the case.
Yeah.
So I like the approach. How did you go about preparing for that change? Because it's massive shift, right? It's operator versus oversight, it's governance, it's risk, all things that you're obviously familiar with. But what did you go about that process? How did you kind of mentally prepare for it?
Yeah, well, I think mentally, you've when people retire, they often will go and sit on the beach or play golf. That's their plan, right? And that was never my plan. My plan was to do advisory, to go on a speaking tour, to launch the first book, launch a second book, and then I think I did 40 or 50 keynotes in the first year, right? 10-15% were pro bono for ISACA and different things that I did. Other ones were paid to fly to different countries, and America, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Japan, and that's fun because you're kind of like working, getting paid, but like being holiday. And so that was the plan, right? Which how do I do that? And then at the right time, when the right opportunities came along from a board standpoint, I would then put on the suit again and do that. But I think that's the mentally preparation and stuff is more around, on day zero when you're actually on your own, what are you going to do? Because your diary is suddenly empty, right? So I kind of knew that, knowing that the fat boy's there, how do I motivate him to keep doing stuff, whether that's speaking, consulting? I ended up going back and working for my old bank at Bank of Queensland after a month. Took a month off and working a couple of days a week to the chief risk officer at Bank of Queensland, who was ex-Macquarie. And so, but that was a nice transition for me because I was working 2 to 3 days a week, helping them do risk appetites for tech, cyber, and data. Okay. And then, but I was also doing the other things and building up my portfolio. Yeah. And so I think being mindful about how to use your time and how do you then enjoy your pattern, whatever that pattern means, because it's different.
And as it starts to change, and
yeah,
I think going cold turkey, for want of a better term, going from all 100% to zero would have been quite tough.
Some people do it, some people like that. But I know, I'm being the fat boy, I'm wired not to keep challenging myself, and I think Josh, to me, the bigger game is your health and fighting off dementia. And if you actually just go that and say, I'm going to play golf too. No problem. Membership coming up in October. But if I went into that, I know my brain would shut down and the onset of dementia would happen faster for me. And so you got to know your family history and say, how do I fight that by not allowing that, by going to yoga every day and doing Pilates, whatever it is, and then go and do some intellectual stuff.
Yeah.
But it's all about trying to find things. Like I started playing the guitar in November, December.
To meet that creative part of the brain that
I'm awful, by the way, okay? But I put up a guitar and I started playing and I learned 4 or 5 chords. I'm very proud of myself. My granddaughter plays 3 instruments and she's 9. She goes, what's that? Because she can pick up the guitar and play just because she reads music. And I was embarrassed, but I was like, you know what? It's okay, all right? Because I'm trying to challenge myself. But I think that's what I think life's about. Whether you're challenging yourself to travel or study or something, that's what you need to do. And you just need to know yourself. So what I'm doing may not suit others, but it suits me.
There's something amazing, and I prescribe to that worldview as well, about sucking at something again. And that experience of being humbled by, figuring out, I don't know how to ride a motorbike, for instance, right? Or what have you, right? Go and learn that. I think the continual learning is important, not just professionally, but also personally. I think it makes such a big difference for all the reasons you just, alluded to. What did you notice that you had to change or unlearn or kind of completely forget when you kind of moved up into that more oversight governance type roles, advisory stuff?
Have I changed that much? So like I'm still mentoring people, right? I'm still doing that. And if I'm mentoring young kids at a university, I'm doing it for free for people who are coming to me that want to be a CIO and CISO. I was going to charge you, right? So I'm still doing those things that I loved to do when I was working. Obviously it's different and less, and I'm still recruiting things. I'm still, advising companies. I saw this really cool tech. So I kind of feel I'm doing the same things. The only difference, of course, is that I'm not obliged to. I could stop and sit on the beach tomorrow.
Yep.
I haven't done that, by the way, since I've retired, but I could do that anytime I choose to. And so that's a liberating feeling.
The ability to do it is almost better than doing it.
Oh yeah. No, it's liberating to say you can choose this, and you get a pension, right? So your pension is nice, and it's all tax free. But then I supplement that with a bit of fun, and so I love what I've done with my portfolio at this stage, but it'll change. I guarantee that, because I know me, and I know that I want to pivot and do different things and do different experiences, and that means different boards, whether listed boards, unlisted boards, private equity, all that. To me, that's what fun's all about, is having those different experiences, different industries. If someone said to me, you're going to do 3 fintech, financial services ones, I'd go, no, that's not going to do that. Yeah. I'm going to do 1 maybe, right? And then maybe 2, and then I'll do other things that are interesting. And that'll keep me learning.
Yeah. Otherwise it's just rinse, repeat.
It is. And what are you doing it for?
And you're not a rinse, repeat guy. I'm getting that from the tail of the career.
I wish yeah, thank you. But I do take patterns and I reapply them. I just might do in different domains.
Yeah. Well, it's a different challenge, isn't it? Which makes sense. Do you believe that every board should have a cyber expert on there?
No, the answer is boards aren't ready for that. People who are in my position think that. If you step back from it all, right, what are boards there to do? Boards are there to implement the strategy, execute the strategy, enable business growth, risk management, which includes cyber, data and AI are part of that digital change. And so to be a board member, you need to be all these things. That also happens to be good at some areas. So if it's just a cybersecurity by itself, that's not good enough. And so unfortunately, the answer is there should be that you have a AI, data, cyber, tech transformation board member. But unfortunately, there's usually only one, if there's one. So you got to be everything. You can't be so specialist and niche.
Yeah.
In time, that might change, but I think right now, I'd encourage everybody to think broadly, because even though cyber's been number one for so many years, now overtaken by AI, how many cyber leaders are there on boards right now?
Not enough.
Hardly any.
1%.
Yeah, if that. So that means that it's not going to change quickly, right? It just means that we need to be thinking more broadly to, operate in that set of rules.
Do you think then, to that point, and I agree with you, by the way, do you think then that it is a case of meeting in the middle and that technologists need to become broader and better and more, to what we talked about earlier, evolved? And boards probably need to have some generational shifts and changes and be more welcoming to these kinds of things. Like, where does the blame lie for that 1%?
Gosh, I mean, boards have been on this journey to get gender balance right. That's been their journey. They've kind of achieved that now.
Yep.
But in terms of other diversity, I think diversity, or non-traditional accounting, lawyer governance things, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting because I go oh my God, I've been in governance meetings and boards since I've been 35, right? And so I've spent as much time in presenting to risk committees, being grilled by risk committees, seeing good governance, bad governance than the average lawyer would be. But they're saying, they're great for governance. You can't fight that. That's a perception thing. And so you got to come across as a business person first that happens to also have the other technology pieces. And so it behooves us to make that change. And then once you're on the inside, maybe you can help encourage a bit more.
Yeah, I think you're right. We being the industry have to actually move forward as well, because there's no point sitting there waiting. It's not going to change any of the numbers either, is it?
No, it's not going to change.
No. Makes sense. You've kind of just answered that to a degree with the thought process, but how do you think someone would go about, let's say there's a CIO out there. I know you do a lot of coaching people who want to be CIOs. They're coming, I'm hearing it all the time now, going, hey, I want to go be the next non-exec director. Don't know why they want to do that, but that's their problem, not ours. How would you advise someone to start thinking about that process and preparing themselves? Yeah. Obviously, as we say, business is a good start, but what else?
I've been asked this a few times.
Yeah.
It's kind of firstly knowing what you want, right? Because you can be non-exec director for, private companies and other things where there's a lower risk, or on risk committees, technology committees where there's lower risk for you. Depends what you're looking for. Is it the business stimulation? Is it you're trying to break through some, like in my case, bamboo ceilings? And so it depends what your motivation is. Everybody's slightly different. And there's, I was speaking to a guy recently who is a CEO at a large bank, and he's going to work with me. I'm going to work with him on his committee at the University of New South Wales. And he was asking me, he said, I've just come off this big role and I'd like to pick your brains. And I thought, that's right, because I've been doing this a little longer than he has, right? Which is interesting because he's obviously had very large bank CIO roles, but it's a different set of circumstances. It's like going from, high school to university. The rules are different.
It's a whole new job.
Whole new jobs. And so people don't care at universities how you study or do you study. They just want you to get the results at the end. And so, and boards are different. They don't want you to, I heard this from a few board members. They don't want you to care about people. They don't want you to grow people. That's not your job. I go, really? No, don't you have to have a CEO decision plan? No, your job is to govern and make sure they're doing the right thing. And it's like, okay, that's interesting. That's a bit of a mind shift. And I thought coaching people, helping people grow in management when you're a board member is be a good thing to do. No, that's not your job. And this was a pretty senior guy at a large bank in Australia. Yeah, but it's interesting because that shift's occurring for myself. I'm still trying to like understand. Really, you don't want me to help coach people? I'm good at that. I don't care about that. So don't put that on your board CV. Take it off. And they just have a different perspective about what the role is. So you could be a very good board director and had been a poor executive theoretically.
Absolutely.
And I thought, obviously, no, it's going to be somehow synergistic. It should be. I've been told, no, not necessarily. You've got to just adjust. Yeah, so we'll see. I
think oversight is very different to operations.
It is. Yeah. And that very same board member said to me that he worked in one of the largest banks in Australia as the board, and said, look, we hired this woman to a board, and she had university PhD professor, and she hated reading 1,000 pages. It just blew her mind out because she wanted to make a difference, and yes, you want to make a difference, but you still read 1,000 pages. Yeah. And I get it. And that's why I said that's why I want to do a combination. All right. So I'm like poking my eyes out with
closer to it, and then also
and then I'm doing ones that are more hands-on, then I'm doing stuff that are a bit more strategic and hands-off, and that combination would appeal to my approach, my personal style, versus doing 5 like that could just kill me.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. 1,000-page board packs, don't know about that, but definitely out there. Any final thoughts that you'd like to share? Anything else that we've not touched on today? Anything else that you'd like to finish on?
Good question, Justin. Look, I think Australia is in a bit of a productivity squeeze.
Certainly.
We've had our good years on the back of mining. We've been the lucky country for sure. We haven't been the smart country. I want us to be the smart country. I want us to be a secure country. So that's why I'm also an ambassador for CISO, all pro bono, right? So to me, there's a theme here about Australia, punching above its weight, being a strong leader, and I believe we can do that. We just need to find what that means and who we follow, okay, in the geopolitics standpoint. But then having our own mindset to say, this is what we think we should be doing, and just doing it. That's what I want for my grandkids and my family to inherit. And so we're here, but we can be much better, I think, if we put our minds to it.
How optimistic do you feel, given what you've just said about the future for Australia?
I think in Australia we are incredibly lucky to be so far away from everything else.
Yeah.
If you travel through Africa, Europe, Asia, and it's so condensed with people, and there's so much that can go wrong with simple things like water. Okay. In those countries, I would feel kind of pessimistic about their prospects of not, war and famine and revolution and stuff. So we do have a good democracy in Australia. I think, we criticize the politicians, but I think they do a pretty good job, honestly. Doesn't mean they're fantastic at delivery, but they, compared to other countries, I think we're in good hands.
Functioning democracies.
We're functioning, we're functioning. So I do feel optimistic towards what we can do, a lot because of the isolation, a lot because of, I guess we've got some good foundations we can build upon. We just need to make sure that we keep building upon those and don't go the way of others who've maybe peaked. And so that could be a bad situation.
I like what you're saying without saying it. Thank you very much for coming in. It's an absolute pleasure. You've given me a lot to think about. We've covered all manner of things. My takeaway from this is that you said you have a plan, but every moment in life there's been planning throughout it. And I think there's some really good actionable stuff there for people to take away as well. So super appreciative. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Joe.
Appreciate it. Pleasure.
Thank you.